Hello, everyone, online and in person. Welcome to another session of Lunch and Learn. I am very pleased today to introduce Nicola Winzenried and Siara a 3D play project that will present a model of teaching transversal skills. 3D play is a project that serves to develop opportunities around teaching transversal skills in technical courses by using tangibles. And there's the mystery about the 3T. And the project serves, the research behind the project serves to basically understand what works where and how by looking into in-class interventions and similar to the one that Nicola and Siara will show us today. And I'll share the floor to you now.
So just to give you a bit of context why this started, there was a survey of the population of the alumni. And following this survey, 3 areas were identified that they were lacking in terms of skills when they left EPFL. And one of them was project management skills from start to end. Obviously, in project management skills, there's the technical aspect of project management, but within project management, there's also how do we manage the resources, including human resources, within the project. There were tools also that they needed to evaluate environmental and ethical impact. And thirdly, they were lacking professional skills in terms of, working in teams. And that they were sort of struggling with when they actually went into industry and had to start working with people, managing teams or being part of teams. So there was this need identified that managerial skills were important. And there are certain classes like the one I teach, which is leadership and management in a global context, which teaches these skills. But otherwise, in other sections, it's not necessarily courses that students would take. So the idea was to be able to propose the learning using tangibles, so using objects, so that then professors like you, teachers, could in their projects say, okay, we're going to do a team project, and feedback or motivation or team building was going to be an important aspect. And the activities that they can bring around that. So I've been teaching since 2013, and between 2013, feedback literacy was taught through theory, but also through practice throughout the semester. So students were available to give each other feedback on their work and also on their behavior when they were working in teams. And so this was a constant throughout the semester. Once we started working together on this, or I was approached by the 3T Play team on seeing, well, is there something that we could do around the skill feedback in the course that we could pilot? And so we did that in 2022. And we had a set of geomag and other little objects that we used. So what we did is we had the same feedback literacy that was taught, and they practiced giving each other feedback throughout the semester. And in addition, we piloted the activity. So what the students were asked to do is view a presentation from a previous year's team, which is part of their team project, and then build a feedback model or using these objects, these tangibles, to be able to give the feedback. That wasn't very conclusive. It wasn't in the sense that it didn't add much value compared to what was done before. And using these objects was quite distracting as well, because what some of them did is, they started playing or building things on the side, not really focusing on the activity, then dropping bits of, metal. So it was very noisy and sort of messy. And then the end result, where they had their models, didn't add more value necessarily to what we were doing before. So what we've realized, though, is that when we talk about feedback, there is a lot of emotion involved. And one of the students, and just after this year's test, he says, well, I don't want to hurt him. And after the feedback, he says, now I'm hurt. So there's a lot of emotion and being afraid of a lot of fear around feedback. And this is an activity that I do every year and that we did last year. And you can't see these, but it was fear of a backlash, about remarks that can be made afterwards. It's not the right timing, hurt the people's feelings, damage the relationship, fear of being misunderstood. I don't want to break group harmony. I find it intimidating. I don't want to make them feel angry. And if you lower in the hierarchy, you can feel very uncomfortable. So again, there's a lot of emotion here and a lot of fear that's linked to feedback. Another question that was asked following the pilot that we did in 2022 is, what do I find most difficult about the feedback process in the team? And here again, it's difficult to find the right words. I want to be constructive. I don't want to be rude without hurting somebody. I don't want them to take it personally. What else was there? Not a personal attack on their work and behavior. So have the skills, that they understand that it's the work, it's not them as a person. So you can also identify that they don't really know how to provide feedback, and then there's the emotion around it. So the second activity that we developed was focusing on emotion and not taking the tangible to actually give the feedback, but to use the tangibles to experience the emotion. So we used Gravitrax. And so they're given an activity to do, and this is something that you'll be doing in a few minutes. So they have a bit of a challenge in terms of, technical challenges. In my class, there's a group of 5 to 6 participants, and they have to compete against others. And what they need to focus on is, yes, they need to build it, but they need to focus on the emotions that they're feeling. Am I being included? Are my ideas heard? And are they applied? Things like that we can experience when we're in a team. And then after the activity, they get to reflect on their emotions, write them down, and then they have to provide feedback to their team members in terms of, well, I didn't really feel that you included me. Very often when we're under time pressure, what comes out is, well, you took the lead, and in fact, you were doing it all by yourself, and most of the team didn't get to participate. So these are really things that you can experience in a team when you're in a project. Yes?
When they are providing that information back to the team, do they say, well, I did not feel included when X, Y, Z, or they just say, I did not feel included?
The idea is to be able to rank whether they felt included sort of on a scale, and to provide an example, right, so that they can be specific.
Right.
And we've got those, because that's the whole thing about feedback, is you can't be just general. I never feel included. You have to be specific so that the other person can link that to something that happened. And that's when that student said, well, I've got a comment to make. I don't want to hurt. And then he received a comment in return and said, now I'm hurt. So the whole idea is also to know, how to be able to give constructive feedback. Why build here? Why is that basically when we fear something, what we do instinctively is the first few seconds, even if we come out of, we freeze, you know, and somebody says, oh, I need to give you some feedback. We don't, oh no, what is it? You know, what have I done? What's wrong? You know, that's the first thing that comes to our mind. Afterwards, there's sort of two options. We can fight. And that's when you get the yes, but, yes, but, yes, but. When somebody gives you feedback, you get that sort of fight back, or they overreact to something that's said. And then there's the flee, you know, I don't want I don't want to give feedback. I don't want to, I don't want to receive feedback. So I just prefer to avoid it. And so what we don't want is the fight and the flee. That's what we need to manage. So there was a study so two things are important here, and that we try and sort of develop with the activities, creating the understanding that feedback can be a gift. It can be highly valuable if managed well, and especially if people feel they're in a safe environment. And there was a Google project called Aristotle around what made certain teams successful. And they went through so many different criteria until they realized that successful teams had one thing in common, is that they had psychological safety. And psychological safety where that they felt that they wouldn't be sanctioned, that they wouldn't be ridiculed when they had, you know, when they came up with ideas, or even when they failed, you know, that the rest of the team had their back. So it's important for people for you, if you're going to do this activity, also to promote the idea, you know, that what's very important is for a team to be safe. When we're safe, we can be the best of what we are. We can be the most productive as well. We can give the most to a team. And so by having these activities across your courses or your projects and across EPFL, allows students, enables them to practice. Encouraging them to practice feedback after this activity, feedback even with their friends or their families, just practice on all the different projects that they're working on, so that when they actually go into industry, they feel much more at ease and they don't have this fear of feedback. So, Siara, unless you have questions right now.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to experience some of this. So the activity that you're going to do, so this is the background that Nicola's given you about the importance of feedback literacy. We've got some specific learning outcomes that are articulated around what you can actually learn from this activity. So as you've seen, Nicola has an entire course in which feedback literacy comes up in various activities in different moments. It's really a skill that's developed throughout the course. But in other courses, it would be interesting if students have some of this experience without dedicating necessarily the same scale to it. So how do you make that happen in sort of a shorter micro activity that could be in several different contexts, not just embedded in a more, like as it is contextually in Nicola's course? So in a full version of this activity, that this is really obviously the key part here when you're generating feedback. And now you have to think about actually giving the feedback to your partner. And when you think about that, thinking about, okay, we're going to have a discussion. I'm going to tell them what happens. Maybe a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of, okay, I can do that cognitive analytical part of this logically helped and to do the thinking part. But when you shift from that logical, analyzing the situation, generating examples, shifting to like, okay, I have to talk to them about it, then that emotional part, you go, And if in fact, as the feedback that we've got from students in Nicola's class, among others, is that it's actually that emotional part and that concern about how other people are going to react to the feedback and how you're going to feel about giving the feedback, that means that people hold on to feedback that they should share with team members, that they don't say what needs to be said because they're not sure how it's going to go. And so actually having the emotional management skills about actually being able to think about, as my current feeling, fight, freeze, or flee, and how do I manage that, and how do I actually have this conversation in a constructive way of having the experience of doing that. So In the full version of this activity, you'd actually then have those feedback conversations of actually having that experience, that practice of having to give a team member potentially difficult feedback, receiving potentially difficult feedback, and then ideally having a second iteration, saying, okay, so we're going to have a second go at making this marble maze. Let's say we've recorded your maze here. You've got a 7-second maze. I'm going to strip it down. We'll start again. Again, thinking about the collaboration, what's the feedback that you got on how to be inclusive, on how to encourage participation, how to make people feel that their opinions are counted, to collaborate again, and to do the feedback round again, having that rapid iterative opportunity to practice. And then the flip side of your piece of paper is sheet B, which is that sort of step back at the end and say, okay, I had this experience, and how do I take what I learned in this experience, in this instance, into my actual team project, or into the association in which I volunteer, or in the other contexts where I need to give people feedback and manage that potential discomfort, which is the goal of this, of having a short, sort of slightly out of context opportunity to have that experience around the giving and receiving feedback, but to reflect on it in a way that allows you to transfer it into future contexts. So this is an example of this approach that we're developing in 3T Play, where we identify 3 different moments within one of these experiential activities. A moment of actually providing the concepts or models or theories, the tools that underpin this skill. So you haven't seen much of that. Nicola's told you a bit about, about the motivation for feedback literacy. To keep it short, you haven't actually got the tools about how to manage it. You've seen that freeze, flee, or fight slide, but you didn't get the tools that are with it. But that's what we're talking about there. The opportunity to actually do it, to practice it, to live it, to have an opportunity to see how it, not just the theory, but in practice. And then the step back of reflection, of thinking about, okay, well, I tried that, but it sort of worked for me. And I think this is why it did or didn't work and how I could do it differently. So these were the examples of this particular activity, of getting the background, of doing the activity, and then the reflective moments, and then that final backside of that sheet of sheet B, which is your opportunity to really think about what you're taking on. And the idea that these are hopefully sort of around 45-minute, 90-minute activities so that they can fit into different courses and different contexts. And we'll be providing so these activity guides that hit on these 3 different levels of the knowing, the doing, and then the learning from doing, to have those activity descriptions that people can then employ in their own contexts. So that's what we wanted to share with you, and we're happy for questions, for comments, for feedback. Oh, and we didn't formally introduce, but also Natasha and Yusuf, who are also with us, are also actively involved in this project, our team members.